Hi everyone, welcome to Miss Adams Teaches English Language. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Cambridge IGCSE English Language exam, paper 2, section A. That is the directed writing in response to two reading texts. So I'm going to take you through the paper, give you some examples and some models and some top tips on how to evaluate whilst keeping your style compelling. So let's get started. Okay, let's have a quick look at the question. So we're looking at the directed writing. So the first thing you should do is think about, well, what am I being asked to write? So let's think about the genre, audience and purpose. So we're writing a magazine article, so that's our genre. For young people, that's our audience. So that's going to tell us a little bit about how we're going to use our address, how formal or informal we're going to be. And it's going to be about how far they should keep up with the latest technology. So it's going to be a little bit of a writing to inform, but as always, we want to make sure that we've got a compelling argument. So we are still going to be using rhetorical devices because it's, because it's an article. Right, then we get the information that we need about content. So it always says this in your article. You should evaluate the views and attitudes people have towards new technology. So you've always got to remember that that is still in relation to this bit. So you're going to be using these views and ideas in order to support your argument, like whatever your perspective is going to be, and then give your own views based on what you have read. It is really important that you do not go, I'm going to write a bullet point here, write a paragraph on this, and then a paragraph on that, because that does not make any sense. You've got to incorporate both of those things all the way through, and your paragraph structure should be based on the actual arguments that you are creating. So it's not like the paper 1 question 3 where you're almost being given the format. This is just what you have to do all the way through. Okay, base your article on what you have read in both texts. Make sure you're balanced. Yeah, use like the same sort of number of arguments, maybe almost like 2 from each. Okay, and of course put them in your own words. Now in this case, unlike with paper 1, 15 marks is for the actual content, so the way that you're using those ideas and putting them into your own words, but it's 25 marks for the quality. So that's going to be your style and also your technical accuracy. Right, so here are the 2 texts that we are going to use for this, just for this example. Again, it's the March 2020. In a second, I'm going to transfer so that I'm going to annotate these papers, but if you want to just take a quick photo of them, go for it. So this one's text A and this one is text B. Okay, so I'm now just going to transfer over and I'm going to show you how I would navigate and mark up and how I would be thinking as I read the extracts related back to the question. Okay, so let's have a little look at the extracts. So as we're navigating through the extracts, it's really important that when you're highlighting, that you're thinking about how the arguments are going to be useful for your end product, which is, of course, writing a magazine article for young people about how far they should keep up with technology, like the latest technology. So you've got to think, well, how am I going to use this as either as advice or a warning? And you also need to be thinking about the ideas themselves, whether you agree with them, how strong the arguments are. So the first thing that I'm going to notice is this text, why you may have good reason to worry about smart devices. Immediately I know that this is going to be the sort of more negative side of the argument. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to draw attention to, estimated 1.5 trillion objects globally could one day connect to the internet. Everything from simple household objects to unmanned taxi drones. Now, that as an argument, I think is a strong one, but you can look at it in 2 ways. You can say, well, isn't this exciting? Isn't this amazing? Isn't this a sign of how far we've come with innovation? But you could also argue that there is a sort of slight sense of danger, or maybe even being feeling overwhelmed by how much technology there is. So that's definitely useful and can be evaluated. Okay, so then it tells us through, it continues through explaining about the Internet of Things and internet connected wearables or smart home devices didn't make your shopping list this year. It may be because of growing concerns about how careless the makers seem to be with the data their devices collect. So that's a very, very strong argument, strong argument against investing in lots of new technology, because they're saying, well, actually the people are allowing data to be collected without proper controls. And I think, you could relate that to any moment, like, for example, where you might call on a particular device. I'm not going to say her name because I've got one in my house and she'll start talking. But you might say, so-and-so, tell me about X, Y, and Z. And then the next thing you know is you're seeing ads on the internet about that very thing. Okay, so this is quite a strong argument. So far, the smart people who want us to buy their smart things have been pretty stupid. Yeesh. So you might want to evaluate that idea and say, is it stupid? You might look at it in a sort of slightly pessimistic way and say, is it stupid? Or is it that they just don't care? Like, is making a buck more important than the individual's data? So they're saying that in order to get all of these ideas, fitness trackers, mattresses, fairy lights, to market, they're not paying enough attention to privacy and security issues. And we've got a good bit of statistics there. 47% of people have said that the reason that they're slower to buy is because of security concerns. So again, in your own mind, you're going to be thinking to yourself, is this an argument that I'm going to use and agree with, or am I going to show this as a counter argument? Okay, so now we have a little bit more detail. So it gives us some of the pros. Smart devices will benefit consumers taking over boring activities such as paying bills or reordering cleaning supplies. So you could use that as a kind of a positive. Smart devices actually make our life more make our life easier. But then it goes into the negative. So this one's offering a bit of counter argument. Concerned about whether or not consumers will search for products, compare prices, and evaluate reviews. It's almost, the argument being put forward is that as individuals, as humans, we are losing our choice, like we're losing our freedom, allowing technology to make decisions for us that normally we would research. And again, you might agree with that, or you might say to yourself, well, what's the problem? If they do a good job, what's the problem with my life being made easier? Okay. So now we get another one of the pros, that it's got lots of promise of new jobs. Is that going to be useful to you as a person writing an article for young people? Well, maybe yes, because you might actually posit that it's a good idea to get involved in this technology because it might be a field that you're going to end up working in. Okay, so think about how you can relate it to your audience. And then for the last bit, they end on a big concern. Again, returning to security weakness, but also the idea of them not exhibiting good judgment. And then this idea, we're returning back to free will. What happens when our house, under pressure to be environmentally friendly, decides it knows better than you do when to turn off the lights? So again, the idea of freedom of choice. Should we be allowing inanimate objects to make decisions for us? Okay. So I've not sort of made any particular notes. I've just highlighted the bits that I'm going to come back to. And I'm actually going to read the second text before I even begin thinking about organizing my notes, because I want to see how they connect. So moving back to the next one. So this is text B. Why are some people quicker than others to use technology? So potentially this is going to show another side. Now, check out the gap, the genre, audience, purpose. The speaker is addressing a group of business people who sell technology products and services. So this is very, very different to text A, which is an article, more similar to what you're going to be writing. So this one might be a little bit trickier to navigate, especially because we've got the kind of promotional aspect as well. Like, it's talking to people who are selling technology. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a focus on who buys, yeah, 3 groups. And then the writer, or the speaker, sorry, I should say, then gives more information. So you might like to think, as you're working your way through, well, where does my audience sit here? That might be a useful way of evaluating the views. So we've got early adopters driving their social status by knowing the latest and greatest in what's happening in the tech space. So be careful here. You don't just want to list all of this stuff. You need to engage with it and make sure you're still being evaluative. So you might say, well, yeah, there are people that do this, but, you know, that's not us. That's not the young people, you know, reading the magazine. That's few and far between. It talks about the fact that they don't need the products for what they do. They just want to be at the leading edge of use. You could almost combine that idea with examples from the first one about people taking unnecessary risks with their security because they're blindly buying things because they're kind of fashionable or they're new. Okay, then we've got this second group, and this is about professional reasons. They're usually in the tech community, buy a product to understand the core of the innovations that are happening. It's not about using the product, but they want to see what makes the product tick. Well, obviously that's kind of a fair enough, but again, think about who your audience is. So if you're evaluating this view, you might say, obviously, if you are interested in the way products work, perhaps because you are planning on going into a career in smart technology or AI or whatever, then this is relevant. But for the most case, it's not probably relevant to the audience. And then finally, we've got the normals. I'm not sure I like that. If it promises to meet a need they find pressing or solve a problem that they have. So this could be used as a reason to buy new technology because it's solutions based. But there is also the other side of it that for people who are kind of more like, you know, the regular Joes, change is costly. So keeping the old thing makes more sense. And also you've got the idea of moving data and procedures to the new thing. But bearing in mind your audience is young people, I don't want to be sweeping, but I don't think that's something that young people struggle with. I think that's more to do with the older generation, like, you know, trying to convince your granny to buy a new mobile phone is a hard task, but suggesting a 17-year-old gets the latest iPhone is probably not so difficult. So do you see what I'm sort of evaluating that view as I'm talking? With new one, they have to learn everything all over again. So this is me evaluating the argument. I don't think that's a particularly sound argument for our audience. And then again, they'll refuse to change until the product completely dies. These people resist any new product until they have no other option. That's me. I think cost is an important one to factor in here because of the idea of, you know, it's young people that are doing it. So yeah, but I don't think that this is necessarily relevant to young people. It might be their parents. Okay, so now that I have read the extracts thoroughly and I've underlined all the bits that I think are going to be helpful, I'm now organising my notes. So what I've done is I've put together 3 kind of sensible arguments from text A, 4 sensible arguments from text B, and I'm going to use this as a way of kind of constructing my ideas. So I've written text A arguments that technology is everywhere, so I'm going to be thinking, am I saying that this is exciting or am I saying this is threatening? Concerns about privacy, are developers careless, or is privacy the price they're willing to pay? Is smart tech taking away our free will? And then on text B, I've got the idea about people buying for status, people buying for work. But again, I'm sort of like, it's unlikely to be you unless you're particularly tech savvy. Buying for need, thinking about expense, processes, and then the idea, are you going to be left behind if you don't keep up to date? So I've got all of the kind of material, but now I need to make sure that I'm using it in a way that supports the task and I am evaluating. And on that note, I want to point out that evaluating is very different to summarizing. Summarizing is where you just record the points in your own words. It's what you've been doing in paper one. Evaluating is where you're actually making a judgment about those views, how sensible those views are, how far you agree with them, where the weaknesses are in the argument, where the strengths are in the argument. So you've got to make sure you've got that flavour. But you're still writing an article. It's not like an essay where you're evaluating. So this first one here is an example of a summary. This is what we don't want to do. So there are three types of tech buyers. The first are the type who buy just to prove they're at the cutting edge. They buy things to enhance their status without really caring what the product is. The second type of person buys tech for their jobs. They work in the tech industry, so need to know what is what. Then there's the regular buyers like you and me. We only buy tech when it's necessary. Okay, so I've taken the ideas and I've put them into my own words-ish, but there's no sense of evaluation. And it doesn't really sound like an article offering guidance to young people. This, however, is a lot more evaluative. Okay, so listen up. So when should you invest in cutting edge tech? Yes, we all know that guy who always has the latest gadgets and gizmos without even realizing what they do. They're an extension of his ego and wallet. But that's not you. You're too savvy for that. You might be the kind of person who invests in tech to learn from it for work. But unless you're a child genius, you're unlikely to be working for Apple testing the competition. No, most likely you're like me, a relatively normal human being who buys a new phone when it breaks. But we might need to be a bit more calculated in our approach. If we keep holding on to our iPhone 10, by the time it's broken, Apple will be up to iPhone 20. We'll be left behind, stranded, totally unaware of the wonderful widgets at our fingertips. Yes, it's a hassle to learn new processes, but we're young. We need to keep our brains sharp. Do you notice how I'm taking those arguments and I'm very clearly, but without going, I agree, I am evaluating as I go by either saying, yeah, absolutely, or no, this isn't really for us. Okay, so one thing that you can do in order to really demonstrate that you are evaluating is use counter argument. Okay, so let's take this little bit from text A, and this is the bit that is concerned that consumers will stop being active in their own decisions, that they'll just let technology make the decisions without being aware of what people are saying about them or reviews, etc., etc. Okay, so here is an example of counter argument where you express what the view is and then you show the other side. Okay, so contemporary critics are arguing that IoT is going to strip us of our free will, take away our freedom of choice, reducing us to mindless automatons that simply accept what technology gives us. Right, so that's the argument, and notice that I've done it in quite a dramatic, emotive way. And now I'm going to counter it by showing my actual view. Give us some credit. We are humans. We have minds. I know for certain that if my smart device chooses a different brand of mascara and I don't like it, I'll send it back. It's as simple as that. If it gets it bang on and my lashes are longer and more luscious than ever before, hurrah, thank you, Alexa. So you can see here, I mean, I'm being quite playful because of the task. I set up what the argument is and then I go, no, that's wrong. But I'm still doing it in a form that fits with the newspaper article, but I'm very clearly evaluating. So what's really important with this is that you get the blend between style and content, because as you know, the content is, 15 odd marks. The style, like your writing quality, is 25 marks. Now, of course, that's got technical accuracy in there as well, but it's also about the way that you're presenting your ideas. Now, whatever the task is, like whether it's an article or a speech, or if it's telling you to inform, you still want to create a compelling argument, especially because you're evaluating. And a really good way of doing that is through your style. So rhetorical devices are your friend here. Okay, so here is a little, acronym that some people like, is FOREST. You can use that. I do have another video, by the way, on making compelling arguments. So do have a little look at that when you have the time. So we've got things like motive language, alliteration, repetition, stats and facts, flattery, opinions as facts, rhetorical questions, exaggeration, second person, like you, but also on top of that, and I've done it in here, you've also got inclusive pronouns, we. It's really good in counter arguments. Some people think this, but we all know that is a good device. And then triplets or triad, rule of three, however you call it. So just returning back to that little bit of evaluative stuff that I've done, just have a little look at how many of those rhetorical devices I've used. So I've got immediately a rhetorical question, and then I actually do this thing called hyperphora, which is where I answer the question that I've posed, which is quite clever. We've got alliteration here, we've got a metaphor here, we've got direct address here, we've got flattery here, and it's an exclamation, so a little bit of varied punctuation there as well. All of this is sort of direct address, but again, we've got a little bit of counter argument going on. And then what I do here is the moment that I use this direct address and say, you're like me, a relatively normal human, I switch it up and I start using first person, plural, like inclusive pronouns. So it's all of us together, okay? Down here, I have a little triad, stranded, totally unaware. Will be left behind, stranded, totally unaware. Okay, a little bit more alliteration, the wonderful widgets at our fingertips. I really like that. And then back to another counter argument. So can you see how I am blending the arguments along with those rhetorical devices for style? Hopefully, yes. Finally, top tips, very quickly. So you're going to spend about an hour 15 on this paper because you've got to give yourself time to read. Hour 15 tops. That gives you 45 minutes for the composition. Read the question before you read the extracts. I normally do it the other way around. But in this case, I think it's really important that you know what you're looking for from the first moment that you're reading, and obviously read them thoroughly. I would highlight with that first read and then find some way to organize your notes. Some people might just do that with like annotations down the side. I like to almost like transfer it into a table so I can see really clearly straight away where I'm going and what I need to include. Make sure you've assessed that gap. So think about the features of the form you need to demonstrate. If you want more info here, I've done a series of videos on like writing a review, writing a speech, writing an article, writing a letter. So go and have a little look at those. Make sure your style is both evaluative and compelling. Yeah, so make your reader want to read you and kind of want to agree with your ideas. And very important, please review your work as you go. Don't leave it to the end. You know, this is a 40-mark piece of writing, and technical accuracy is part of that. So if you review your first paragraph and go, whoopsie, I forgot my capital letters and I comma spliced, you'll correct it, but then your next paragraph, you're not going to make those mistakes again. So you'll be more accurate as you go, and you won't be so pooped by the end of the task that you can't see the mistakes. So always review as you go. Sorry if you've watched a number of my videos, I must have said that about 20,000 times. And then cross through all of your planning when you're done. Right, that's it from me. Thank you for watching. Sorry, quite a long video, but it's quite a big chunky paper. Do have a look, like I said, at some of my other videos about writing styles if you want a little bit of guidance. And if you're finding these videos helpful, oh, please subscribe. It would be super duper helpful for me. And also you'll get notifications when there are other videos coming up. All right, that's it again. Thank you so much for watching. Happy revising.